Lights, camera, action. Welcome to Mixtake, a World Outspoken podcast. As film, television, and entertainment are influenced by the mixing of cultures and heritages in the United States, we are here to discuss, celebrate, and represent. I'm Dani Alicea.
And I am Robert Rivera. In this episode, we are discussing DC Comics. In fact, actually, we're just going to zero in on one film, Blue Beetle.
Yes.
And we decided this topic is way too heavy. Donnie and I couldn't handle it on our own, so we brought in the big guns.
What?
The OG of World Outspoken.
The OG.
The man himself, Ricky Padilla. Welcome.
Y'all are gonna get us canceled or arrested. I don't know what's happening here. One or the other. Glad to be here. Glad to finally make it to Mixtake. I feel like it's a privilege. I didn't get invited on right away. I had a couple seasons in, so
it's been a long time. It's been a long time.
You wanted us to learn how to fly. You said on our own before. That's right. You were soaring with us.
Oh, y'all giving me too much credit. I sound like a wise sage there.
Well,
yes. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited because we are talking all things Blue Beetle. This is the first all Latino cast superhero film. So it makes sense that, again, we would bring in the big guns for this discussion. So, Ricky, can you give us your quick take on the Blue Beetle film?
I can, but specifically for this segment, I kept this a secret. I didn't tell y'all. I have some quick takes on previous Mixtake conversations. Can I rattle them off?
Yes.
I promise they'll be short.
Okay. He's gonna
Number one.
Yeah.
Number one. Affleck is sloppy.
Thank you.
Donnie is right. He's too sloppy to be Batman. It's weird.
Yes, agreed.
No, that's on purpose, but go ahead.
So look, he's the only Batman who has a meme of him like smoking a cigarette in desperate exhaustion. Too sloppy.
Yes, too sloppy. Agreed.
Take number two. Mexican women as Amazons. Can't argue against it. It's a brilliant connection.
Let's do it. Let's go.
So this whole idea that y'all had the hair and everything, I died laughing, Donnie. Perfect description. Mexican women are Amazons. It is what it is.
Let's go.
Donnie, your take about Ant-Man, though? It's a bad take. It's a bad take. Robert is right. It's one of the best MCU movies. The first Ant-Man is very good.
I like that it sets up the quantum realm. Outside of that, I'll leave it.
No, I'm going to go the other way. I hate that it sets up the quantum realm. I like just the heist movie. I don't like the quantum realm. I hate the quantum realm.
Oh, the Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second one?
Well, I like Paul Rudd, Michael Pena, Evangeline Lilly, all the cast, Michael Douglas. It's a great cast. Mm-hmm. When it starts getting into the quantum realm stuff, it gets a little bit, to me, unintelligible. Yeah,
it goes bonkers for sure. It spins out of control, but it's a very good cast. He's great as Ant-Man. And in terms of MCU, not in terms of Marvel, one of my favorite characters.
Oh my word, you threw out the F word. Favorite?
He's funny.
Wow.
He's good, and he doesn't. It's the one that they're allowed to be funny with because who's gonna take Ant-Man serious? Like it is what it is.
This is cool.
Yeah.
Ricky and I, we're in a kind of a text chain where we talk about a lot of nerdy things, and I feel like I'm not perfectly on page with Ricky most of the time. So I found a common ground. This is going to be our conversation. This is where we start every conversation, Ant-Man, and then we just see where it goes from there.
No, Rob, this should be alarming to you because this is so rare. This is not okay.
Rare agreement. All right, I got two left.
Okay,
right.
two more.
Batman is the best. That Robert is correct about that, but it's mostly because of his rogues gallery.
100%. Now, that and the city, Gotham City itself, is kind of a cool and mysterious place as well.
Fair.
But I agree. Batman himself it's the whole pack. When I say Batman, I mean the brand.
Yeah, that's fair.
So you're talking Batman and Gotham and
Yeah.
Catwoman,
I mean,
and all the villains, the Joker, and
yeah, Batman is still the coolest.
Everything that comes with Batman, or
yeah, but if his villains were, I don't
General
know, like
Zod?
if there was like a villain that was his, the anti-Batman, where he dresses up like Batman, whatever, kind of like what they do with Marvel a lot, like a mirror image of him, just in a red suit or something. I would not like that, but I think his backstory is really intriguing, and I think the city is amazing. And yeah, the Rogue.
I mean, the Court of Owls alone, it's one of the coolest things. Like,
yes, yeah, there's like this Illuminati. Yeah, Illuminati type underbelly. You've got the Falcones and the Maroni gangs. Yeah, it goes deep.
Yeah,
he does need deep therapy though. Batman is a troubled soul.
Oh yes. Oh,
don't we all? Let's be honest.
But
he's not a fascist, but he is toxic.
Hey, good segue. I'm gonna give my last one since he gave us a good segue. Y'all describing America Chavez's power as the ability to cross borders like an immigrant. That was very astute, but very funny. I laughed so hard. This is not a take. This is just commending that observation, because I would have never interpreted that way, but very good.
No, that was Donnie. She's the brains behind that one.
I mean, it's my Mexican heritage, bro. I was like, what? Why is her thing crossing borders? That's so messed up. That is wrong.
Yeah, that was really good. I mean, fair observation. I mean, that's the kind of critical eye that we should be looking at these movies with, especially as we talk about representation and how these things reflect our worlds. So anyway, my quick take, speaking of representation, my quick take about Blue Beetle is that sometimes we really can trust our friends to represent our cultures well. A Puerto Rican here telling a story about a Mexican hero, that's amazing.
Well said. I love it. I love the summation of it. And I 100% agree. Mostly because I think for most immigrant journeys, or families that your parents are from somewhere else and they move you to another country, the journey is so similar. The finding who you are, and especially for Latinos, we all get the close family ties. I think many other cultures could say the same. African Americans and with African cultures, and Asians. I just watched a film. I'll look up the name right now, but The Farewell on Netflix.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great movie, and in it they discuss these exact themes of what it means to, because there's a one family that they were in China, they moved to America.
Yep.
And the family, they're back in China, and the family is discussing whether or not this family who moved to America is still Chinese. And the family who moved, they're like, well, no, we're American. Our passports are American. We're American now. And they're like, you're never not Chinese. Like, what in the world? The language that you speak, the food that you cook, how you interact, even with your family. And so that, again, this is a very, I don't know, common, maybe. There's some common themes here that cross cultures and races and all that good stuff.
Nice. Was that your quick take?
That's my long take. My quick one? Just kidding. Rob, give us your quick take.
My quick take, I think, is it took a long time for us to get an all Latino superhero film, but now that it's finally here, I am happy to see that it represents the Latino heritage or experience in a positive way. I'll unpack that a little bit more later, but yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So we'll talk more as the show goes on, but for now, let's press rewind on this episode of Mixtape.
All right. Well, let's actually kind of go back in time here. Blue Beetle is a character that I don't know if you have any history with, and so I'm gonna throw it out there again to Ricky. Ricky, do you have any prior connection or any history with Blue Beetle? If so, what's your introduction to this character?
Yeah, he's a relatively new character Jaime is a relatively new character to the DC Comics. So I knew about Blue Beetle when he was introduced in the comics, but I'm not an avid comic reader, so I hadn't read it. My first real interaction with Jaime as Blue Beetle came through Young Justice, the animated television series that I think people can watch on Netflix and Max and other places. But that was my first like real kind of exposure to Jaime as Blue Beetle, which is awesome, by the way. He's fantastic in that show.
Yeah. How about you, Donnie? Were you familiar with Blue Beetle? Is this kind of your introduction, or?
Man, this is my introduction. I was watching an interview with Cholo Maridueña, who is the lead in this film. And he was talking about how his mom read the comic books. And so he was very familiar with, or he was somewhat familiar with the character. But, he kind of was more familiar with the character because of her. And I thought, man, what a cool mom! Like, I want to, I like that's goals. I want to be like her when I grow up. So I'm like, man, I wish I had grown up on the comics and really delved it. Have already become very familiar with the character. But this was my first interaction with Blue Beetle, and I guess I'm giving it a quick take here, but absolutely loved everything I saw. How about you, Rob? First,
Yeah,
here first.
This is not my first. He kind of danced around in the background of my life. As I watched shows. I don't know if he popped up in the Justice League, or it was actually the Super Friends show back in the early 80s when I was watching that. So I had seen him around. He is definitely in the comic book The Death of Superman, where I believe he dies. However, that might be the Ted Kord iteration of Blue Beetle. But just the same, Ricky, I watched a little bit of Young Justice where Jaime pops up. And so I got a little familiar with him there. And yes, it is a really great iteration of him. Reminded me a lot of Spidey. And so it was cool to see him on the big screen. But all that said, this is my proper introduction to the character.
I love it. So we're all starting off from kind of the same place. This is really our introduction. I would imagine like most moviegoers who went to see this was likely their first introduction. So that's cool.
All right. Well, let's channel our inner scarabs and press play on this episode. In both box office and popular opinion, Marvel Comics has exceeded the success and popularity that DC has had on the silver screen. Yet, despite Marvel's progressive approach and diverse reach, it was DC that was first to release a female-led superhero film in Wonder Woman. Once again, 15 years after the inception of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm not trying to make this Marvel versus DC, but let's just be real. DC does something like that again as they release the first Latino-led superhero film. And before we go too deep into this film, let's answer this question. What were the best and worst parts of Blue Beetle? Before we start trying to break this down too much, let's kind of say, what do we like about this film? What were some things that didn't work for us?
So Donnie? I'll chime in here, and I'll just kick it off with the worst thing, and then you guys can agree or disagree with me. In the beginning of the film, maybe like the first 30 minutes, I kind of got, if you guys have seen Spy Kids, like kind of Spy Kids vibes, where it was just like, where is this going? Am I convinced that these people are the roles that they're playing? Was it a little too silly sometimes? Or even there's a scene where Blue Beetle and his sister, they're talking on the roof, and it just seemed like so much like a set, kind of like if we harken back to Black Panther, there were certain scenes in the beginning of the film that was like, oh, that's not a jungle, that's a set, where there's like cars exploding, they're in Wakanda, and you're like, that is not, or so some of it was just that I think that was the worst part, that it took so long for me to be like, oh, okay, I really am digging this family and these actors, and I didn't I stopped getting the Spy Kids vibes. Did you guys get that at all?
I got the Spy Kids vibes in the sense that it was very like cheeky the first few like minutes. It's like sort of it's comical in not the comic sense, right? Like it's got this sort of kind of happy-go-lucky sort of way of going.
Yeah, like they drop him off at work and it's like the whole family. And it's like, I mean, I was like, we're family oriented, but like that, you know, it was just a little like, I don't think that would actually, you know, I like the, you know, okay, they're like really hyping this or blowing it out of the water, but I was just like, oh, it's a little, I don't know.
Yeah, it borders on stereotyping in that sense.
Yeah, and yeah.
It can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. Donnie started us on the pessimistic route, starting bad and going good, I guess. But I'll talk about what works, and then I'll tell you about the experience I had with it, because we talked earlier about our first introductions to the character Blue Beetle. What's interesting is that this movie has an Easter egg. It comes up a couple times, actually, of the first Beetle hero that Latinos would recognize, and it's the Chapulín Colorado. He's in the truck is named after him. There's a couple, I think he comes up on the TV a few times in the background. You can see him, you know, the famous phrase, right? No contaban con mi astucia, right? They didn't count for me to be this smart. Is this like working man's like slogan. I really loved that they acknowledged the existence of a Chapulín Colorado. I appreciated that they brought him right into the world, right? And connected the two stories that way. What's interesting though is this is personal experience. I recognize that this won't be everybody. In fact, the director of the movie, Angel Manuel Soto, his descriptions of why they brought in a Chapulín Colorado would demonstrate that he had something of a different experience to me. But I know El Chapulín Colorado as a Mexican, is a Mexican actor. It's a Mexican story. It was exported from Mexico to the rest of Latin America. Very popular in all of Latin America. But I knew it as a Mexican product in that sense. And so this is a strength of the movie, and yet I felt a little bit different about it was, you know, instead of feeling like, oh, this is like In the Heights, this is my people, this is my world, I totally understand this is it. I'm being represented. I actually felt like, oh, that's awesome. They're representing Jaime and a Mexican family in a Mexican city with a Mexican kind of symbolism all over the place. Totally cool. And I'm really glad for that. I think the fact that Angel Soto was able to do that and do that so well is really beautiful. And I think sometimes, especially among Latinos, we don't do a good enough job of being specific. We sort of represent pan-Latin in some ways. And this movie did a good job of being specific in that way, such that even among us, we can feel some of those differences. You know, for people who are Guatemalan, Salvadorian, Costa Rican, in both the music and film industry, their only options tend to be either Mexicans or Puerto Ricans is what often gets represented. And so that level of specificity, I think, invites more specificity, and that can be really good in the future.
Yeah, it's always very interesting to me how Latinos can get bunched up. You know, it's just like y'all. And, you know, so like if I'm like, oh, you know, I don't really like spicy food, people will be like, well, you're Mexican. But I'm like, well, I'm also Puerto Rican, and Puerto Ricans don't do spicy. Like, Puerto Ricans don't do spicy. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, we don't do spicy. You know, it's like plantains and rice and, you know.
I may speak for yourself.
But I'm like, you know, you can't just like lump you know, like it's all, you know, they all just eat rice and beans. It's like, no, there are differences. And I actually really liked that Ignacio or Carapax, his Guatemalan background was brought into the film as well. And then Jenny, who is the love interest, but also a powerhouse on her own in the film, which I really enjoyed, was Brazilian. And that was also kind of overt. So I really enjoyed, yes, it was the dominant family, and the main character is Mexican, and that's represented in the music and their love for each other, and, you know, the food they ate. You know, he gets there and he's like, tacos, I need tacos, you know. So it was beautiful, but also, again, to kind of see a celebration of other countries as well. It was pretty cool.
Were you also trying to figure out the whole movie, like how? Did you say her name is Jenny? I forget the.
Yeah, Jenny Cord.
Oh, Jenny Cord.
Oh,
Okay,
in real life, or that was her.
No, in the movie, how she was Brazilian. I think didn't they acknowledge that in the movie?
They say it at some point.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So
or maybe
that distracted me for a while. I was like, oh, maybe did I make that up?
I don't know if they say it in the films or if I know that from real life. And
me too.
All I know is I agree with you that I was distracted because her name was Jenny Cord, but I knew she was a Brazilian actress, and they were sort of leaning into her expression of Latine-led, and so it was distracting whether they said it or not.
So I was trying to figure out, like, okay, is there a backstory? They didn't give you one. That's totally fine. They didn't need to. I'm just saying what I thought.
Well, I mean, she's a Latina no matter what because her dad is the original Blue Beetle, and Blue Beetle is always a Latina. Right?
Well, yeah, he's one of the Blue Beetles.
He's one. Jaime is one of the Blue Beetles who's Latino, but the other Blue Beetles are not Latinos.
Really?
Ted Cord was not.
Yeah, Ted Cord is a
and
white
there
guy.
may have been was there a Blue Beetle before him too? I feel like there was one.
There was. There have been three.
Three. That's what I thought.
So there could be more. Very cool. Okay.
Well,
fair enough.
I think what I'm going to say about the movie is let me start with the negative. I was getting some of those vibes. I've never seen Spy Kids, but I did get some of the vibes of like, is this for kids? It felt kid-ish. George Lopez early on, especially, kind of gave me those vibes. Like I'm trying to imagine the scene where Jaime is that the symbiote, the scarab, or I forget if it has another name, is ripping through like kind of his body and kind of transforming him. Their reaction didn't feel authentic in that moment. Like, I don't understand how they were not completely traumatized by that moment. And George Lopez screaming at the top of his lungs. It's funny, but it felt a little camp. I will say though, as the movie went on, he actually grew on me a lot and became a very endearing character. And so there was it wasn't just him. I think Susan Sarandon overacted in this movie as well. I know she's a good actress, but I didn't feel she didn't sell it to me like she's the bad,
100%
big bad
agree.
Of this movie.
100% agree.
Right, and it's sad because I've seen her like shine, and this was not the role for her.
Her sidekick, however, Carapax.
He was cool.
Whoa, that dude! I'm like, yup, that's believable.
Yeah, he was scary.
Yeah,
he was scary. What I loved about this movie are the themes that came out of it. It sets up, it shows the plight of the immigrants struggling, and even Jaime graduating, and the realization that this isn't a free ticket to a great career and here comes generational wealth. No, he's cleaning pools and and looking out while his sister's taking a dump that she talked about for a little too long in the movie. But she says something interesting. She says, we're invisible to people like that, talking about the chords. It's like our superpower. And it is interesting because in one sense, that is true. Like there doesn't seem to be a place for the migrant person. It's kind of like, they're inconveniencing. Let me get them out of the way. Either that or the focus becomes just a negative one. Like, oh, they're a nuisance. They're in our way. They're blocking our police stations. They're taking our jobs or whatever. A couple of other things that I just want to kind of get this all out. Like the things that I did like. I thought it was hilarious. The guy that Susan Sarandon kept calling Sanchez.
Oh,
he's like, no, my name's Jose Francisco Morales Rivera de la Cruz.
Him going for multiple last names was the realest Latino thing ever. There's like multiple last names. It was fantastic.
Let me go back to something that I liked, but I don't like how it was portrayed, was when Abuela came out with that giant like sci-fi gun.
Oh, yeah.
The Gatling gun?
I like that she had the backstory, and I want to know more about her.
Yeah,
that moment though. That gun's got to be so heavy, and she's aged. Like it was just silly. It was funny, but it just didn't hit right for me.
It did the exact opposite for me. It hit so hard that I was like, yo, I love that. Because oftentimes, especially in American culture, we're all about value and output. So what you contribute is your worth. And so as you get older, if you're contributing less, you're worth less. And so how, often we look at our elders is, you're just taking up space. But then Nana comes on the scene and she's, got her experience and she's got her revolutionary past and she's got her, I know how to work this gun, and she lets her hair, like she's ready for war, even with her hair. So for me, it hit so hard. I was like, man, I love it. I love the value that they're placing on our moms and our grandparents, great grandparents.
Me too. I like that. Just that scene was a little bit wild.
And for me, it all came together in that scene. That's
if she had a rifle or something in her hand, or shotgun or something, I would have been like, okay, cool.
No, to me, the more profound grandma moment was when she tells his sister, "Ahora no es tiempo de llorar. Now's not the time to cry." And they go on their act of resilience or resistance. And once they've won, then she says, "Ahora es tiempo de llorar." Right? Like that sort of wisdom sharing was quite powerful.
That was a beautiful moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then they pulled in Jenny.
Yep. Yeah, no, that was well done. Robert, you had one more thing. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. But I wanted to
just that. And this is just really superficial. I am so happy Cypress Hill was weaved into this movie. We ain't going out like that. Come on, man. I got hype.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about music and other kind of nods, I don't know if y'all know this, but quite a few of the scenes were recorded in Puerto Rico. Some of them in San Juan, and I thought that was awesome to be able to see Puerto Rico. It in that way, the movie had this sort of pan Latino thing where they're like Puerto Rican scenes, but this is sort of a more Mexi-Cali sort of looking neighborhood that they're in. And I mean, they did a good job of sort of mixing in and folding in together several expressions. But I did love seeing Puerto Rico clear and visible in this film. That was really cool.
Yeah, I liked that essentially they're giving Palmer's its own vibe. So, past directors with Batman and giving Gotham a vibe and giving Metropolis a vibe. Like, it was very cool to see Angel Manuel Soto give Palmer's a vibe and have that Caribbean flair to it. Really cool.
Being from Florida, it did feel like he gave it Miami's vibe, but he did give it a vibe. Yeah. It's true. It is a distinct city compared to Gotham and Metropolis. I mean, those things are cool.
Well, what about thematically? I know I brought some out already, but are there any themes or ideas that transcend this movie?
I think another one, in addition to what you've already mentioned, were microaggressions. So, they're small things, but what's interesting is we've seen them in this film, and we actually, in our episode on A Million Miles Away, we saw microaggressions in that film as well. And I thought it was interesting for both films that it was important to weave those concepts in. They're slight. In this film, it is when Jaime goes to see Jenny Cord for a job, and he walks up to the receptionist, and she looks at him and she's like, "Oh, deliveries are downstairs." And he's like, oh, I'm not here for a delivery, whatever. And then he's like, well, my name is Jaime. And she's like, okay, Jamie, you can sit over there.
Okay. Wait, time out. Uh-huh. That scene makes no sense. Why did she call him Jamie?
Because it's the, I don't know, the English pronunciation of the name.
Yes, I'll give you that if she was reading it. He clearly said,
oh, yeah.
It's like, did she purposely do that to him just as a disrespect? Like, she didn't make a mistake.
The way it's set up, it's not a microaggression. It's just a straight up act of racism, right? Like, she just intentionally.
Because had he filled out an application or something, she was pulling it up and reading it, and he had to keep correcting her. That would have been one thing, and I think that's the way it should have been played. But for him to say, yeah, hi, I'm Jaime. Okay, Jamie. I was like, why did you say Jamie after he just said Jaime? This is audio, this is not she's not seeing any visual
Yeah.
of his name. Yeah.
She
So
comes
I thought,
across as petty. Yeah.
yeah, petty. But I don't know. But I think it's supposed to be played the way that Donnie is saying,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't make any sense. That I forgot about that. That caught me off guard though in the movie.
Well, okay, so when I say my last name, it's Alicea, but almost always people will repeat it back to me, Alicia. And I'm like, that's clearly not what I said.
Yo.
Like they're all syllables that we use in the English language. Like there's no enunciation of my last name that's like, oh, that's not normal. Ali Saya, like Muhammad Ali, and like you say a phrase like
So
Ali Saya. So I'm like,
you're saying if they've never seen your name at all, just by you just saying it, they'll repeat
yeah,
it back.
they'll repeat it back in in English. Like they just make but again, I don't know that it's overt. It's not like they're trying to come at me and be racist. They're just
it would be like Ricky though saying, yeah, Padilla, and they're like, okay, Padilla.
Yeah, exactly.
That would
the
be
same idea.
You see, but that would be like, to me, there's something intentional there, because if they know Spanish that well to know that he's using the ella, then they're flipping it back on purpose.
It is intentional, but I don't think it's meant to be like I'm coming at you. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you're on the phone and you're like, I don't, Jose.
It's certainly devaluing the name, the importance of a name, right? It's certainly devaluing it in that sense.
I think Sarandon's character calling that guy Dr. Sanchez all the time, because in her head, that's what she remembers him as for some reason. Fits that a little bit more. She doesn't know his real name, and she's just like, Sanchez, whatever your name is.
That's another good microaggression. I don't even know if it's microaggression or just straight out racism. Whatever it is, but these instances like that, come up throughout the film. And again, not just this film, but we see it in other films as well. And I was just like, I appreciated that was important for the director and the writer of the film to include in this.
I'll say thematically, I've sort of tipped my hand up to this earlier. I talked about, to me, the most profound moments with Abuela were the times where she was speaking to the sister. But there's also the moment right in the middle of the movie, kind of in the climax of it, where Jaime has to re-encounter his dad in, some other dimension or sort of death place, right? But one of the things that I love about this Blue Beetle character, at least portrayed in the film, it's not quite that way in the comics, I don't believe. But in the film, one thing that Angel Soto did as a director, which I think was a good choice, was he portrayed a hero that was shaped and formed by wider familial connections, as opposed to a hero shaped and formed by ruptures in familial connections, right? Batman loses his parents, Spider-Man loses Uncle Ben, right? Like, unlike that, this Latino character is profoundly shaped by Abuela, by his tío, by his dad, right? Like his sister. All of these connections shape this Blue Beetle, make this Blue Beetle tick, right?
I like that.
I think there's something very I think it displays something about how Latinidad takes on the hero persona or character, and how they shape each other, right? How Latinidad would shape a hero, and how a hero would shape or be formed in Latinidad. That to me is the dynamic there that I think was really quite clever, and had to be a choice from Angel Soto that you wouldn't otherwise do, because again, I don't think in the comics that's true. I think in the comics, Jaime is kind of alienated from his family. He's been kind of a rebel kid, and he's ended up in kind of delinquent centers, and they didn't do that in this film. They made him a good family boy, which is different. And if you know the character from comics, can maybe be uncomfortable. But I think in doing that, something Robert said earlier was it portrayed Latinidad in a really important, beautiful light, and it demonstrated what Latinos would have to give to a hero if we were to shape him or her.
Here is one thing that Jaime's dad says in the film. We're on a journey. What's important is that we go on this journey together. Things don't last. La familia, that lasts forever. They last. And I love that you know, like you said, it's this wisdom that's being passed down, and it's the familial knitness, tightness that is woven throughout the film, and is the thing that is the kind of the success point. And I also love that. Oh man, even the conversation that he has with his dad as he's in between worlds or whatever. Again, was just a beautiful. I don't know. It was beautiful to see him interact, and I guess kind of be reminded of some I don't know, important things from his dad. Like as we journey through life, like my dad passed last year, and there's still things that I think of, what he told me all the time, and I'm putting into practice in my life. So even when people pass on, it's not like the lessons that they taught us or are still teaching us are gone. Like, it's a really beautiful thing to, I don't know, press into your family and be strengthened by those relationships.
That's good, Donnie. And this is the person who you guys do like family vacations, family outings. Like I feel like every other month I see like 14 deep going to go see a movie.
Yeah.
You're out in some resort. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that I loved as well. It reminds me a little bit of Black Panther, and I know that the director was asked specifically, like, does he hope that this can have an impact like a Black Panther? Obviously, I don't think it had that cultural impact, and I'm not fully sure why. All the reasons there. However, they are similar in the sense that Black Panther was his family was close as well, in his culture. They were kind of the ones that were interwoven. Whereas here, it's his family. It's Jaime's family unit, and I appreciated that very much because it does resonate to me. Like my family gets together pretty frequently, and we share a meal, we spend time, and it's several generations. It's my grandmother, my mother, it's me, my kids. So we have all these generations in one area, in one room, just kind of experiencing life together. And I love that we saw that portrayed on the big screen, even though it got wild, where they didn't just speak wisdom, they actually fought together. So it wasn't just Blue Beetle on his own. He's gonna bring the whole posse, to fight his battles. One of the things that the director said in making this movie, he said, we can finally be heroes of our stories and not villains of their stories. And that's another thing that I like when we talk about representation and why it's so powerful. Because I know once we start talking about these topics, some people kind of roll their eyes and say, can we just enjoy a movie for what it is or whatever? But I think the power is, we watch this movie and we see not just our culture, the broader, Latine-led, represented on the screen, but as heroes. And as Ricky already pointed out, Jaime is not a troubled kid in this story. He's shaped by his family, and he continues to lean on them for direction and insight. So those are some of the things that stuck out to me. I know I'm just kind of echoing what you guys have already said, but those things.
One quick thing, Robert, from what you've mentioned, one thing that struck me as odd in the film, and there might be good reasons for why they did this, but I felt like the neighborhood only getting involved at the very end of the film to help rebuild the house, that didn't really resonate with me or ring true to me in terms of how a Latino neighborhood would respond. There might be good reasons for why they framed the story that way. Maybe because it has that immigration component, they were trying to show the neighborhood to be scared of like coming out and sort of being, full in the face of police or that kind of thing. There might be good reasons to explain that setup, but it did strike me as odd that a house is like burnt down, that people are like being accosted, and the neighborhood, because we're a neighborhood kind of people. Like people sit on the porch.
Everyone's gonna flood the streets. Right.
Everyone's gonna flood the street. It just didn't strike me as exactly how our neighborhoods work, even if there might be good reasons for why they did that.
I will say there's one fight scene at the house, right? The big one with the guns. I mean, and to be fair, if you're brown and you hear gunfire, you just hit the deck. You know what I mean? Like, nobody is like, I'm gonna get my artillery and start, rocket launching. Like, we're like, hit the deck, make sure everybody's good, get the kids, get the dogs. Like,
Man.
all right. And then afterwards, that's when we, kind of go out. So I see, I don't necessarily mind how it played out in the film, especially because the people that were attacking the house were like full tactical gear. They got helicopters and what I mean, like futuristic military issued government. So I'm like, I got my little 22 over here. Like
Yeah.
what are they gonna do? So I didn't mind it too much, but I think this. Oh, go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say you're talking about the house, the battle at the house. I was getting so frustrated and anxious as that house was getting torn up. I was like, how much is it gonna cost to replace it? So I was kind of relieved when it burned down.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a time for us to take a look into the future as we press fast forward on this episode of Mixed Take. With the box office struggles that Blue Beetle has had, do you think we will see more Latino superhero films from either DC or Marvel or maybe somewhere else? Is a film like this important, or is it more important to tell maybe smaller stories? What do you all think?
It's kind of interesting. I think about this in relation to the field of work that I'm in. Obviously, World Outspoken is creating educational resources and content for people dealing with cultural change, but primarily people within the Christian faith. And when I think about the ways that Latino people have worked through things like the field of theology, which is what I primarily stay in. It's interesting because the Black community has done things like create HBCUs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Historically Black colleges and universities, their own institutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Latine folk have made a different choice. I don't think it's necessarily a bad choice. It's just a different choice of having our folks trained and integrated within a kind of larger system, right? So we've got Latina theologians all over the U.S., significant theologians, people like Elizabeth Clement Frazier on the board of World Outspoken, right? She's only ever taught in major universities, that kind of thing. And then she's made intentional, beautiful choices to commit to neighborhoods like the one that Jaime and his family live in terms of supporting them with educational resources. So I say all that to say, uh, we haven't been the kind of people who create these like big, this is an all Latino kind of institutional thing, right? And sometimes I wonder if that, when it comes to the popular media world, if that's part of the reason there might be these kinds of struggles with, oh, here's the Latino movie for the Latinos. We don't really kind of operate that way. But if you have a movie that's a story with all kinds of people, or just a main story that happens to have a Latino lead, I think we'll show up. You know what I mean? Because that kind of integrated lifestyle or integrated world seems to be the choices we've made. I could be wrong about that. Happy to be corrected on that. But I have been thinking a lot about those different kinds of choices that we've made. Some of them might be worth critiquing, as it might reflect a kind of assimilation, but otherwise it might reflect just a different posture in terms of how we present ourselves in the world. Anyways, long-winded answer to say, I hope they make more movies about Blue Beetle. I hope they make more Latina stories, at whether they be superhero films or otherwise. I imagine that what'll end up happening, we're such a big community that we'll find things like the Mandalorian being Latino. We'll find things like, main characters. Not, I know that the Mandalorian himself is not, but the actor, I mean, right? All I'd say, I think we'll find ourselves integrated into the world because there's so many of us and we're talented people. That's what I imagine will happen.
Yeah. I think of this just purely from box off from Hollywood or from the studio, and I hope they don't look at maybe box office numbers and come to a conclusion, oh yeah, well, we don't need to represent this group because this group isn't going to come out to see us anyway. And the reason I get nervous is because of the Batgirl movie that was pulled, that was filmed. It was ready to go. I think it was just supposed to be released on streaming, and they decided for whatever reason, maybe it was terrible, and maybe it would have just done more harm. I don't know. But the lead of that was Leslie Grace, who is the Latina actress from In the Heights, and pulling that, and then this, not seeing the success. Although I think, Ricky, it was you who brought it up to me, made a point, right, that this movie was originally supposed to just be a streaming movie. So any box office is success regardless for this.
That's my understanding. I could be wrong. I've looked it up again, and it seems that was the original plan, that it was supposed to go straight to streaming as well.
So, so those are the only things that make me a little nervous, but I think that these films are really important, and perhaps even if this movie isn't, this movie didn't succeed maybe the way that they wanted to, they'll look at movies like Into the Spider-Verse or something and realize that there is a real appetite for that movie kind of portraying the Puerto Rican culture, and that movie, that's kind of a masterclass, right? That movie in how to do it and how to integrate it in a way that doesn't feel preachy. It just feels very normal. It's just a normal part of his life. And you walk away kind of feeling proud of the way, Miles Morales is represented in that film.
I'm going to echo, Ricky, what you said, in that we are too talented, too already kind of ingrained in Hollywood to be ignored, if you will. So for the OG Mixtape listeners who have been with us since season 1, you'll remember our first episode with talking about Guillermo del Toro, or our second episode discussing Alejandro Iñárritu, who is the director of films like The Revenant and Alfonso Cuarón. Amazing. All three are Mexican directors, and all three get to direct the films that they want to direct and tell the stories that are meaningful to them. And I remember listening to an interview with Guillermo del Toro, and he's like, I love monsters. I love what they bring to a story. And so oftentimes in his films, the monsters aren't really the villains. They're the misunderstood characters that are ostracized and villainized. And the monsters in his films are typically the fair-skinned, good-looking, light-eyed individuals with power and influence that are, keeping their thumb on those, others. So I think they will continue to tell meaningful stories. I think they'll continue to cast really talented individuals. I think, there's some amazing actors and actresses. Wait, how do you say that? Actors and actresses. Actors and actresses? No, you know what I'm saying. Amazing actors. And we've talked about them in season 2. But there's no way that, especially as we become a bigger part of the population at large in the United States, there's no way that our stories can't be told. It's just who's going to be telling them. So is it going to be Latino writers that are telling our stories, or kind of going back to the director of this film? Okay, are we going to be playing the villain in other people's films, or are we going to be playing the hero in our films?
Eva Longoria, right? She's kind of like taken up directing.
She has.
As maybe James Gunn. Maybe that's who you need to start focusing on. Look in that direction.
Heck yeah!
Right now, the DC slate. I don't know how diverse it looks in terms of Latin America.
I also wouldn't mind seeing Lin-Manuel Miranda's take on a superhero film.
Oh, a musical, yeah.
Not a musical, but
That'd
I would like to see his take.
A rapping Batman.
An Green Arrow movie, but it's a musical.
Yeah.
I don't know about all that, but he's an amazing creator. So I would like to see what he would do with a
That would be
superhero
wild.
film.
The only thing I would say as we look ahead to directors that are Latinas making these films is that I want them to have the same kind of thoughtfulness as Angel Soto. He's a Puerto
Mm,
Rican guy who knew he was making a movie about a Mexican character
Yeah.
and made sure with his team to represent that Mexicanness well, without
Yes.
essentializing or anything like that, but he did it well. And so you don't want Latinos to, you don't want us committing the same kind of habit of washing us out into this kind of pan Latin, we're all the same sort of thing. As long as we're good about that, I think it can be done well. And this director did a good job about that.
Yeah. Don't there can be a temptation to pander to certain audiences because you feel that. I'm sure directors are feeling that weight on their shoulder. Like there's a lot of money being invested into this thing. I got to make it good. So you need to stick to your conviction and make something brilliant from there.
mhm. Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, post-pandemic numbers, just filmmaking in general is down something like 20%. So they're not seeing the same turnout to the box office. Now, it's not like no films are being watched. Oppenheimer, Barbie, the Mario film, they all did really great, and they're not a part of a previous film franchise. So it's like, is it the new films that aren't a part of anything that are really the way to go, but are kind of rooted in history? They've got a following or a backing or something like that. So movie makers are really, they need to figure out, okay, what are people going to show up for and show out for? And I think that goes to y'all points of, all right, we need to take great care in the stories that we're trying to tell, and then how we're publicizing them and all that good stuff. Like, all right, what are people showing up for? How do we make films kind of, along those lines, interesting, telling our stories, maybe rooted in something, but kind of a new, fresh take on it.
No, I want a Beetleverse.
I'm down for a Beetleverse.
Where's
I'm.
the Beetleverse?
Would you rather see this as a show or a movie? Because Ricky, you were saying this was initially supposed to be a show.
Well, it was a movie initially supposed to go to streaming, just like the
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Batwoman or Batgirl movie, whatever it was. I believe that it was supposed to be the same idea.
I see. So would you rather see this a show? So Rob, if you want to see more of
Yeah.
Palmer's show or movie.
I think a show could be pretty cool. I mean, you
Yeah,
have a
either
lot
one.
of you do have a lot of time in a show especially if they're kind of, as long as it's not like a Star Wars Disney show where one episode is 40 minutes, the next one is 23, and I want like a consistent hour. If you give me that, um, and flesh out the community, that's the only way I would want that show. Just dig deeper into the community, into the family, and build around that. So
Yeah, we can get some backstory on Nana. Go back to her
It'd be
revolutionary
dope.
days.
we could.
See a young
That's
Nana.
it.
Well, it is time to press pause and, like I say, reflect on points that have stuck out to us or takeaways. Ricky, what are your final thoughts on Blue Beetle?
Hoy no es tiempo de llorar. It's not time to cry. Press into those pain points, like Abuela said.
Mm. What pain points?
Whatever they might be for the audience, right? La lucha, as Mexicans would say. La brega, as Puerto Ricans would say. El
Mm.
tiempo de resolver, as Cubans would say, right? Whatever those are, right? I think the takeaway that I have about this film, about our conversation, is that that our posture should be that grandma preaches in that film.
Why do you think we run from pain and the struggle?
Well, I don't think we do. I think we run into it. That's what grandma was saying, right? Not run away, but press into it, right? The daughter, the sister, I guess, daughter, sister, however you want to call it, based on the relationship in that film. Um, I mean, she's pretty broken, right? She's hurting in that film. And what I love in terms of a thoughtful piece to it is grandma doesn't say you're not allowed to cry. She
Mm.
says, let's finish this lucha, this
Yeah.
struggle. And we will cry. We will cry. We'll have that moment. but let's press into this fight. Um, I think there's something beautiful. I think there's something profound to that. I think there's something healthy to that, right? To say we're gonna cry, but we got to press in as well. And our folks are really good about that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Rob, how about you?
That's really good. No. That's a great final thought. The movie, like I said, thematically is beautiful, and there are moments that really grip me. It is kind of a little bit all over the place in terms of the tone of the movie. I wish it was a little bit more serious. So I say this like Rudy says when he receives the truck at the very end of the movie, and as I watch it again, help me like it. Although I think he was kind of that was kind of him pretending like he didn't appreciate the truck, and I thought it was a little bit strange when Jaime was kind of like, what do you say? What do you say? And he's like, all right. And he walks over to him and he's like, yeah, come on, guys, help me like it. But deep down, we know he was saying, thank you very much. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good line, though. Help me like it in terms of these Spanish films.
Yeah.
How about you, Donnie?
I think my final thoughts on this film, I loved so much. I loved the character development. Like you said, George Lopez, his character just grew on me more and more. I loved Nana. I really appreciated even Carapax and where his backstory. Again, the character development in this one was, I thought, was just very charming and well done. I'm excited for more. I am looking forward to exploring more Palmers. Like I want to see more Puerto Rico, and I want to see more Latino cultures represented in future films. Like let's see some Ecuadorians, and let's get some different foods like pupusas and tamales and arroz con dule, or whatever. Like let's I don't know, highlight more and celebrate Latinidad. And with that, this is where we press stop. But have no fear, we will press that play button again soon. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Mixed Take. Join us next time as we continue this journey in the far stretches of the universe. Ricky, where can people find you online, and what's going on with World Outspoken?
Yeah, follow World Outspoken at World Outspoken on all the socials. You can follow our work. You can, if you're interested in conversations about how this kind of stuff, these kinds of thematic or cultural identity questions play out, especially within a church setting, feel free to reach out to us via the World Outspoken kind of contact us page. And we'd love to connect with you and hear more about questions you're facing and challenges that you have. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to have more conversations about movies and basketball. Those are basically the things I know I'm supposed to be posting about theology stuff. It's mostly just takes about movies and basketball. At Emmanuel WOS for World Outspoken. So at Emmanuel WOS on Twitter, and we can chop it up there.
Okay, random question. How do you like the in tournament stuff going on in the NBA?
Those courts are insane.
They're wild.
Completely unhinged. But I'm here for them. I'm enjoying the in-season tournament. I'm here for the crazy courts. I don't know what expressions like, they're scoring in the paint even means anymore when the whole court is painted. But I'm here for it.
I know I saw the bright red court for the Bulls, and I was like, wow, the
Bulls court looks like they're playing in hell. It's Dante's Inferno.
No. I'm happy. That court distracts us from the product that team is putting out there. So whatever distracts me from that team, I embrace.
You're talking about the Bulls? Stop! They've been
blow it up.
Terrible. I mean, against the Bucks, the other night. I mean, anyway,
they're terrible.
No,
they're terrible.
Not terrible. Come on.
Oh no. We're gonna have to start the Mixed Take sports show
podcast.
Yeah, pretty soon.
Oh no. Well,
because I can tell our takes are mixed already.
They are. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast or wherever you tune in. Also, head over to worldoutspoken.com, a site preparing the Mestizo Church for cultural change, where you'll find information on consulting services, thought-provoking blog posts, and other great podcasts such as The Feature, Questions from the Pew, La Ventanita, the Mestizo Podcast, the show for the mixed people of the mixed church. Also, head over to worldoutspoken.com and order some cool merch. There's all kinds of goodies. There's hoodies and stickers and journals, and you name it, we got it.
All right. Also, follow us on Instagram at Mixed Take. We're also on Facebook still, I think. You can also follow me on Twitter at Rob Riv and Donnie at Donnie Jack. That's DONIJAC. Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days.
Right.
We always want to shout out to our producer, Rich Hurtado. And also special thanks to the incarnate and mysterious Ricky Padilla.
Hey,
we always reference.
To be here.
Yeah, we reference you. Yeah. It's nice to finally put a voice, no, everyone knows you. Okay, and we just want to also say what's up to the whole World Outspoken family. We hope you join us again as we continue to dive into these nerdy parts of culture influencing entertainment. And until next time, cut.
It's a wrap.